Hey, my name is Ginger, and I'm currently the Executive Director of ASIFA South International Animation Society, which is located in Atlanta, but we're really, fostering and trying to push the animation industry, especially sustainability in the south of the US. So I'm the Executive Director, and this is Jeff.
Hey everyone, my name is Jeffrey Yu. I am the business director with ASIFA South. And so what I do with them is we help bring in sponsorship and donations for all the wonderful events and workshops that we provide to everyone in our community. And some of our workshops are also free of charge at many locations.
Definitely. And one of the things that we've been consistently doing, especially for those who are interested in the field of animation, is gathering resources, also putting out a database of, sustainability in Georgia to do with wages, and also to kind of get a feel of what the whole industry is like. So I think a lot of you are interested in, the animation industry in Georgia, and I would highly encourage you to actually check out our website resource, because we actually have a little mini video that we're not going to waste your time with on the different studios that are located in Georgia. And along with that, also an animation map where we have over 50 studios and we're counting. And we're actually going to be putting more about animation studios not just in Georgia, but also in the surrounding areas, especially in the South, going with Florida, also Alabama and whatnot as well too. But I think because everybody's interested in breaking into art and animation today, we want to kind of tell a little bit of our story, but how we broke in and some tips for you guys. So Jeff, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So when I first felt that I wanted to break into the industry for animation or even start, doing art was probably back when I started playing games, as a very little kid. I remember playing with the Sega Saturn. I had Shinobi and Golden Axe and was a Street of Rage and all the really old games. And then there was also like the old Atari games like Pong and stuff like that. And then once I got into things like Blizzard's games with StarCraft and World of Warcraft, like every day when I was at school, I kept thinking about, how do I create this character with different modular tools and weapons, and I'll like draw all the different people with armor and stuff like that. Started watching anime and got into Gundam and Evangelion, and I just kept building. So when I got into high school, I started taking some actual traditional art courses, learning how to paint and sketch and stuff like that. And from there, I wanted to go into a career with that. And so my parents were very supportive, and when I told them I wanted to go to SCAD, they helped me, get through that whole that whole period financially as well. So very appreciative of them for that. And so while I was at SCAD, I started learning, all the skill sets for storyboarding and concept art, graphic novel, because I wanted to be a manga artist originally. But then I noticed, oh wow, there's all these other really cool stuff I can do with this skill set. You can storyboard for games and films, and I joined the 24-hour conventions and met Tony Tseng there, and he eventually got me an internship at Hi-Res as an animator. And when I graduated, I started going into I started going to Siege, because I had friends who went there, and I met Andrew Greenberg and a bunch of really fantastic folks there. Ginger, my wife, was at SCAD at the time, but we would meet occasionally at Siege too. And from there, I would attend panels, and I happened to be at a panel about kickstarting, because since at that time I was still looking for a job, I was thinking maybe I can start my own thing. And it just happened, someone at a local board game company, cool me or not, they were looking for a graphic design artist. And so they brought me in as an intern, and I worked my butt off while I was there, and eventually that transitioned to a full-time job. And it didn't just stop there. Like one of the things that I want everyone to take away from my story is that number one, you definitely want to get out there and meet more people. Networking, because you don't know who you'll meet, and they might be your next boss or they might be your next coworker. And then you join organizations like ASIFA South or GGDA. They might be other workshops where you can learn other skill sets. And so for me, you'll see that after Cool Mini, I started joining a lot of modding communities. I joined online communities for game development. I started learning Unreal Engine at the time, which was Unreal Engine 4. And I started getting into all the blueprinting, 3D modeling, because I did have my major was in animation, so I learned some of 3D modeling, texturing, all that type of stuff. But then that eventually built into me meeting Orion from PulseWorks at a portfolio review that Ginger set up for us at GGDA. And I was there as a CIFA South representative at the time. I wasn't business director either. I was, I think, the education
Coordinator.
Coordinator, yeah. So we helped with the workshop and stuff. But anyway, So Ryan said they were looking for someone to help out with some of the development side, and so they asked if I knew Unreal Engine, and lo and behold, I just happened to learn Unreal Engine, and so from there I
Yeah.
transitioned to VR.
It's not that simple though,
It
because
wasn't.
like there was a test too, right? You had to do tests, and you learned Unreal Engine by also like kind of making a game before that, and starting like your own company too.
Yeah, it started off as so when I said the modding community, a lot of people had the idea that we had some mods that worked out for because we were modding Skyrim at the time. It was called Beyond Skyrim, and I was part of the Wardenfeld group that was developing like the concept for the environment and some of the Dwemer crossbows. But people thought, maybe we can create a game, kind of like a horror game, and so it was called We Exist at the time, where it's kind of like a detective horror game. You walk through a forest with like this flashlight, spooky stuff. But because of it was people who were passionate, but none of us understood the whole gamut of what it takes to create a game or even to run a business, right? So that didn't pan out, but it did give me enough understanding of more of the process, and I could bring that along to a lot of the other endeavors I have today.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I think when we're talking about these stories that we tell people or the stories that you hear of success, it's often like very, I did this and then it happened to this, but the in-betweens are all like the details of that is like, you're like, oh no, nobody see me cry at night when I'm like working and then I can't figure things out. And then it's like, oh, look at the amount of hours that I put in, or some things are just really luck and timing. So yeah, on my end, how I got into the industry was that I actually came from Thailand in 2011. 2011, I was actually doing graphics and web design before that, but I wanted to do storytelling, and so my parents were like, if you're gonna go do your master's, you might as well do it now. So I'm very privileged and lucky. I'm gonna say that it's definitely a big step up to have that resource and support, but also the other part that I would say that contributed to the whole path is having a goal and having a process and trying to figure out what works for you. So currently, I work in many places, which is interesting. That's why I said my full time. I have two full time jobs, but one is actually a art director at Black Women Animate Studio. Oh, I love working there. I work remotely, so I work with the different clients that they have, like Cartoon Network or Hulu, to kind of work on projects for animation. And the other job that I have is a post-production manager for Trioscope Studio. It's a hybrid animation live action studio. And what I do there is I manage, the pipeline and the workflow, the communication for the post-production team. I do recruiting, I do various production projects, and this is because my background is very all over the place. And I also have an assistant who helps me with this. So usually my role is a little bit different from people because I kind of have a specialty that fits into that, so I can negotiate. And in negotiating, I can tell people, hey, I can manage this for you on my own time, and then I'll communicate. So therefore, building that trust is a very big part of my journey. I volunteered for a lot of different places, and like SIGGRAPH, I volunteered with ASIFA, learning how to build up organizations. So also I studied at SCAT with Jeff, and in that process, I also worked on other people's projects, my own projects, and learned that organization skill. So to the point that I got to now, I'm 35. I'm not that young. I'm not that old either. But it just means that within the time span of 10 to 15 years, I've accumulated a lot of different things through experience enough to kind of figure out what I myself I think as my pros and cons. And one of those things is that I have ADHD. So usually I'll be all over the place. When I talk about certain things, the topic will jump. So I try to organize myself in writing down notes before I go to bed about what I'm going to do the next day. I work with groups so that I learn how to delegate a little bit more, work on communication skills so that I can scale up different things. I have a Google Meet to help me organize my thoughts. So that's really, really important because if you look at my Siege presentation in 2017, you'll see that I'm like blabbering all over the place as well too. So I would say that my journey, would be I went to SCAD, but my struggle is a little bit different. My struggle is because I'm an international student, like international person. So there's a lot of paperwork I had to go through, a lot of restrictions on where I could or couldn't work. I had the passion. I definitely had the passion, but the different steps to get to where I wanted to go I needed to break that down into process because it was all about timing. It's like I would have certain amount of times that I would be able to apply for certain visas, and if I missed that time, it would like kind of collapse into itself. So I think that for me, in terms of like what my tip would be into breaking into the art and animation or any industry, is you have a goal, and the goal by itself is one part of it because it's almost like a destination map of where you need to go, and then the other part is the process of how you're going to get there. Because the more you're able to kind of break it down to where you need to go, it would actually help you to get there faster, and also you don't lose your way because it's so easy to get distracted nowadays, right, hun?
Very, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you have any tips that you want to give people, like, the things that you wish that you knew when you were
Absolutely. I mean, coming out of SCAD, well, when I graduated, I think the big thing was just getting out there to meet people. Because after having been at SIFA and CGraph and GGDA, meeting a lot of people, some of the people you meet become your mentors and stuff. For me, when I grew up, I was very introverted too, so it's kind of hard for me at first if I go to events and stuff to at least break out a shell and talk with people, unless maybe I have a friend there or something that I can do introductions. So what I do is sometimes I'll make a goal there, like maybe at least I'll talk to maybe three people, and then maybe attend at least one or two panels, and if it's something that interests me, great. I'll go up there afterwards and at least introduce myself to one of the persons speaking, and then when I'm there, the goal isn't to just ask for a job or something like that, but rather maybe ask more about what they do. Maybe I can even connect with them through Discord and talk with them about stuff they enjoy, what they like. Maybe they have tools and stuff that could also help me and show them my work from there. And then later on, you could say, hey, I happen to want to break into this, or I am a game developer. Maybe there's something you could at your company that you are looking for someone who to fill that role or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think in one way, the networking part is kind of opening your opportunities. The more skill sets you have, it's like marketing. Like there may be two people who are equally good at something, but if your mind thinks of somebody first, that's the first person you're gonna call. Because when you need something done, you want it right away. You're like, okay, who can I find who can do this and that, right? Because when I hire, I do have a list of people I go through, but sometimes the people who are in front of my mind are like, oh, top of my list, because I can remember them at that point. And when someone asks me for a recommendation. And the second part for me with that as well too is that trying to know yourself, because like what Jeff says is that we all have different ways of networking, or we have building relationships or energy. Like I have probably more energy than he does, so therefore it's very easy for me to go out and be like, hey, how's everybody doing, a little bit more. And so I'm okay with face to face. I'm okay with online. So I figure out what is good for me. And then doing that. So for some people who are a little bit more like, I'm more introverted, yeah, that sure, you can find a way to do that online as well too. Nowadays is like you can join Discord channels. You can also join events or organizations that are towards your interest, because if it's towards your interest, then it would hold that sustain that energy level a little bit more as well too. So I think it's quite important to use the time to figure out yourself, and find that use as an advantage. But the main thing as well too is what I'm going to say is that research is such a big key point of a lot of these things, because you'll know things like studios. Like when you look at the different studios, the more you know about them, the more you actually know what their roles are, how they fit into things. So I recommend for people who are especially starting out to make a spreadsheet. Because when you make a spreadsheet, you can see things in front of you. You can make a spreadsheet of what studios are local, what studios are the dream studios you want to go to, what kind of roles are there opening for right now, and look at through the responsibilities and the list and see if you objectively match that. And if you have skill sets that are missing, if they're missing, then you need to start working on them, like right now, in order to be able to transition into that. And once you figure out what you're good at, then you can kind of build on that as well too. Yeah. Do you have any tips on how you look for things?
Well, I mean, definitely going through all the was it like LinkedIn was a big one too, because you definitely want to have your website up there, your contact information, because if they look at your resume and stuff and they don't see a contact information, they're not going to know who to email and stuff, right? So that's always a big one, and that's something that Ginger and I look for when we look at like resume and stuff when people go to CIFA and they do like portfolio reviews and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then also when you're doing your portfolio, it's also how do you present your best work and work that you want to do, because some of the stuff that I used to do as a student was I'll throw everything I had up and on there, right? So all my live drawing and all the anime stuff I used to draw and 3D, and not just have different pages, but they're all just jumbled together in a gallery, because I see that a lot. You definitely want to separate them out more, and put up your most recent stuff too.
Yeah, definitely for sure.
Mhm.
And if there's any questions, just let us know as well too while we're answering these things because we're just going to keep going.
Mhm.
Yeah, but the other important thing for me in terms of breaking into art and animation is not just the networking part of getting to know other people or the researching part of doing your job well,
Mhm.
but also realizing, that hard work doesn't necessarily equal good work. And what I mean by this is that
Oh,
you have to like actually know your focus. So if you say, "Hey, I draw every day. I am a hard worker." Yes, but if you draw every day, you draw the same character facing forward. You'll never learn how to draw the character at a side angle or the back angle, or three points of view or in perspective. So in terms of diversifying, understanding that just because you put in a lot of amount of time doesn't always necessarily mean that you're learning the skill set that you need to do the job that you do. You have to actually look at maybe other people's work and see, like, the person that I want to be a concept artist. What do I need to know? Concept artist is not just about drawing pretty pictures. It's about understanding the mechanisms of the world. It's about, like, why is this character a certain look? What are the materials of the clothing that they wear? What the terrain is, the mountains. And that means that researching things outside of just doing art, researching things, like Jeff knows a lot about World War, or he'll know a lot about history stuff, and like some what stuff do you know
a
about?
lot. Well, I mean, one of the big thing is getting a lot of what we call like visual references, or like stuff that you have in your visual library. So I used to follow things a lot when I was starting in concept art, and also Scott Robertson and a lot of other artists too. And they'll talk about just going out there and just experiencing things around you, right? Like go and join like a soapbox competition or something, because that's how Scott Robertson started with his like industrial engineering sort of job before he got into concept. And so the more if you fly planes, you'll know how the gauges will look. If you drive cars, look at how there's difference between like a stick shift versus like a manual versus automatic. Where how do they design the UI? What's right with certain cars? Like is it ergonomic, stuff like that. For me, I like to do aero gardening too. So if I'm designing something sci-fi, I may throw a bunch of like hydroponic stuff in there too. And I also used to do martial arts. So when I animate or draw a character moving, right, I can probably figure out, okay, maybe if they're holding the bow staff a certain way, if they were like pulling back farther, it feels like there's probably more weight in it, versus if they were striking from like just straightforward over here, just
Yeah,
bonk.
Jeff was teaching me how to spin a what's it called, spin a stick kind of thing.
Bow staff.
Yeah, and then initially before I was like, I can never spin it because I don't know why, and it's because my hands were not in the right directions. And as an animator, if like knowing that, I can actually implement that into my animation as well too.
Mhm.
Yeah, but also the other thing about like not just breaking into the industry, for me, the very very big crucial thing about working and staying in a job is consistency and responsibility. Because I know so many people that usually I mentor folks, I try to give them opportunities in the field, and it's okay if their level of artwork or animation is not as good, because I can train that. But what I cannot train, as much as I try to, is if somebody is not consistent in terms of communication, or like if you have stuff to do because life happens. It's fine, but you need to let people know ahead of time, because in a studio or in a pipeline, you're not the only person that the whole project is anchored on. If somebody asks you to draw an illustration and you say, okay, but you don't deliver it at the time that you should, the animators are waiting for you. That's money. That's like the client is waiting on that, and nothing goes. So for me, I always let everybody know that animation is a collaboration field. So when I look at, not just even resume, I look at a lot of people's personality, of how they treat, volunteering, how they treat their personal work, how they do group works, how they try to problem solve, and have a service mind as well too. Because it's really about understanding that you're part of making a certain piece of project work. And so therefore, like if you're not telling people the stuff, it's like sometimes I was like, I'll have to end up, staying in the middle of the night doing your work for you. So why should I hire you if that's so much more work for me? That is such a big thing.
Yeah, that's a really important one too because it's something that's very hard to quantify because a lot of times you see people on a resume they write like, oh, I'm a team player or I keep the schedule stuff, but until they actually give like an art test or you have the opportunity to actually show that, it's very hard to do it. So you want to make sure you already like drill that into from the get go. And I know like as artists, some of us aren't like the best at managing like schedules and stuff, but for me, I use a Kanban lead, to keep track of all the different tasks and stuff I have. Trello is also a very good one too. And what else is there? What else do you use?
Oh, I use ShotGrid, I use Airtable, I use Google Drive, I use like Evernote, whatever that is needed to help me do the job that I need to do. And I always try to reevaluate myself in terms of like perspective wise and say, like once we finish this project, what can we do better next time? Did I also not communicate properly? Like, how do I make sure that I proactively tackle certain issues next time? And also looking for always new experience to add to my pocket as well.
Mm-hmm. And on the feedback part too, that's a big one too because sometimes people give you feedback, right? But it's you kind of have to not take it personally sometimes, and see what works over there, and you have to kind of look at what you've done, either just the way you work, or even just your work itself, and see where that you can make the adjustment to, because that's how you improve.
Definitely. Any questions that we want to tackle in the last
Yeah,
5 minutes?
a lot of good info today. Few questions. Let's start off with Kenji Shiguma on YouTube. Can we get a description or summary of the various roles on a game art team?
Various role. I mean, when you say game, because that's so wide, right? I work at VR, and you also have people who do programming and all that stuff, and that's like back end. So sometimes you might not even know that they're there, but by virtue that your game actually works, that means the program's been done right. You have audio. Audio is so huge, and I want to get all to all the art roles too, for like visual stuff. But music, if there's no music in a film, if there's no music in a game, right? Like those cues are so important, especially that immersiveness. So you got to give props to them. Then you have people who do all the environment, the character, the props. You have people who do all the depending on if you're doing films for 2D games. Sometimes you have in betweening stuff like that. For 3D, and for sprites, for example. And then you also have like visual effects and you have like level designers, people who go in and do all the texture work and stuff like that. Then of course you have like all the project managers. I mean, there's a lot of different
Yeah,
things.
my thing would be that in terms of talking about the roles that are available, you should definitely look at the end of a credit, like a game credit and stuff. You will have like a whole bunch of stuff, like even for animation as well too. I usually encourage people to look at the end of the animation and see what roles there are, because it's like a whole long of credit list that there are, and different games, different animations work differently. So some things may have certain roles and some things may not have certain roles.
And even in board gaming too, you also have people who create the miniatures and they do the fabrication part. People who do the graphic design, rule books, and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Of course, at Hi-Res Studios, John Bridges is the chief god artist, which is a nice thing to be. Draws the concept artist for the gods. Samantha Sword asks, from a project manager side of things, are there certain management systems you find common between the animation and game studios you work with?
Yes, ShotGrid is a big one, especially for like VisFX Studios and stuff as well too. So because it integrates a whole lot of different things like asset system, review system. For other VisFX places, if it's just review, sometimes they'll also use Frame.io, which is now also part of Adobe, so you can actually look at that as well too. A lot of animation studios still use Google spreadsheets as well too, because ShotGrid is paid, so there's like different seats, so different studios try to find different ways to do things. And so using Google spreadsheet is still a really big one, because you can put in the different functions and people can go in and kind of like put down what roles they are and what parts they're on. Personally, myself, I do really like airtable.com, because it's like a Google spreadsheet, but it's dynamic, so I can move things around as well too. But in terms of animation studio wise, ShotGrid is still currently the big management one that you have. In smaller studios or things that they have, like it can vary between Asana, Monday.com, especially for like advertising agencies or like hybrid creation agencies as well too. I'm not sure for games that you have like what F-Tracks and stuff too.
We also use things like it's like smaller studios. Sometimes I see Trello. I've seen things like Monday Basecamp. For let's see, what else have we used? I've seen Sketch as well too. It's really good for like
Which has
review.
now been bought by Unity. Yeah, but in terms of like project management for animation, for sure, usually ShotGrid is still the main one. It used to be Shotgun. It's called Shotgun, now it's ShotGrid. So I would say that's the main tool, and also Google Spreadsheet.
There's also one called Hack and Slash. I don't know if that's still around though.
Yeah, but basically all of them kind of operates in the matter that you have like some kind of a review platform. You have a thing for tracking your assets and your shots, especially if you have like 500 shots and stuff as well too. And also you have like a system where you communicate, like Slack. A lot of places that I know use Slack to communicate as well too.
They're also integrating too now. Yeah.
Correct.
All right, last question for those just breaking in. What tools would you recommend they learn?
Well, I mean, this depends on, like what you are breaking into. If you're going to be an illustrator, of course, like Photoshop, Procreate, Krita, a bunch of these different things that you can use. If you're going to break into 3D, Maya software, Blender, I love Blender, and also if you're trying to break into, motion graphics, that would be After Effects. And I would say that like if you want to do 3D, especially also like ZBrush sculpting and whatnot. Go ahead, honey. Games.
No, you named a bunch of really good ones. Yeah. I mean, you also have Substance Designer. There's a lot of integration with Unreal Engine and Unity these days too. So if you want to go into game design, you can learn either Unity or Unreal, and they have different uses for them too.
Yeah. Substance is now free for students as well too. Just announced, I think the rookie announced that as well too. There's a list of free softwares. I can definitely put that on the chat as well too of for different things you're interested in, because animation is a wide gamut. It's not just a small little thing. So there's like whatever you want to do, like Toon Boom, especially for 2D, or like TV Paint and stuff. It depends on your resources. It depends on your time. But the whole thing is about the basics, and also kind of understanding where you want to go so that you can kind of start, to save up for that or learn more about those programs.
And there's also a lot of great tutorials even on YouTube nowadays. So some people can, learn on their own. And then if you really want to take the next step into either, going into a actual program, like a formal program, that's something else to consider too.
Yeah. Thank you everybody for your time, and definitely check out our website that Andrew has posted, asifa-south.com. We will be adding more open source tools and stuff like what Andrew was talking about as well too, especially for those who want to break into animation.
Yeah, perfect. Please share that tools list in chat, because our next presentation is on open source tools. So again, thank you to ASIFA South.
Thank you. Oh, last shout out, International Animation Day is October 28th. So we're going to be doing an online screening, so keep tuned on our website.
Yeah, we'll be promoting that, and everybody get animated October 28th. Thank you again.